The most merciful thing in the world is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But someday the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Francis Wayland Thurston of Boston examined the papers left by his late granduncle, Professor George Gammell Angell, Professor Emeritus of Semitic Languages at Brown University. The professor had died suddenly in the winter of 1926, reportedly after being jostled by a nautical-looking man near the waterfront. The circumstances seemed suspicious to Thurston, particularly given the contents of the documents he discovered. Among his granduncle's effects, Thurston found a locked box containing a peculiar collection of materials. The centerpiece was a bas-relief sculpture of disturbing character, monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, but with an octopus-like head, whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on hide, and 4 feet and long, narrow wings behind. The thing seemed instinct with a fearsome and unnatural malignancy, and was of exquisite artistic workmanship. The accompanying manuscript revealed that this artifact had been brought to Professor Angell on March 1st, 1925, by a young sculptor named Henry Anthony Wilcox. The student had been troubled by strange dreams and had felt compelled to create this representation of the entity that haunted his sleep. Wilcox described experiencing a series of vivid nightmares beginning on March 1st, in which he encountered vast cyclopean cities of Titan blocks and sky-flung monoliths, dripping with green ooze and sinister with latent horror. In his dreams, a voice seemed to call to him, repeating strange syllables that he phonetically rendered as Cthulhu Fatan. The young artist had been seized by a creative frenzy, modeling the clay bas-relief during the height of his nocturnal visions. Professor Angell had taken great interest in these accounts, for reasons that would become apparent to Thurston. Wilcox's dreams had been accompanied by similar disturbances across the globe. The professor's notes indicated that during the same period, from late February through early April 1925, sensitive individuals worldwide experienced unusual dreams and psychological disturbances. Artists, poets, and those of nervous disposition reported nightmares of dark, dripping cities and monstrous entities. Many experienced unexplained anxiety and fear. The young sculptor had eventually recovered from his fevered state, the dreams ceasing as abruptly as they had begun around April 2nd. He recalled little of what had transpired during his weeks of strange visions, though the bas-relief remained as tangible evidence of his otherworldly experiences. Professor Angell's interest in Wilcox's account stemmed from an earlier encounter with similar phenomena. 17 years prior, in 1908, the professor had attended a meeting of the American Archaeological Society, where Inspector John Raymond Legrasse of the New Orleans Police had presented a peculiar statuette and an even more peculiar tale. 2. The tale of Inspector Legrasse. The inspector's story began in the swamps of Louisiana in a region of mixed population where voodoo rites were not uncommon. In November 1907, the police had received reports of strange ceremonies in the marshlands south of New Orleans. A squatter family had reported hearing drumming and wild chanting from the depths of the swamp, and local authorities had organized an expedition to investigate. What Legrasse and his men discovered defied rational explanation. Deep in the fetid cypress groves, they encountered a scene of primal horror, a mixed throng of men, boys, and women engaged in a frenzied ritual dance around a great fire. The participants, including both civilized folk and the most degraded specimens of humanity, were performing ceremonies of unspeakable depravity. At the center of this diabolic gathering stood an idler crude representation similar to the bas-relief that Wilcox would later create. The statuette depicted the same octopus-headed monstrosity with wings and claws. The cultists were chanting in unison, repeating phrases that included the word Cthulhu. The police had arrested several participants, though many others escaped into the dark swamp. Those captured proved to be a diverse group: degenerate sailors, mixed-blood swamp dwellers, and even a few individuals of apparent respectability who had been drawn into the cult. Under interrogation, they revealed fragments of a horrifying mythology. The central figure of their worship was Cthulhu, one of the great Old One's entities that had ruled Earth in eons past, before the rise of mankind. These beings had come from the stars when the world was young, establishing great cities and civilizations beyond human comprehension. They possessed knowledge and powers that transcended the natural order, and their very existence violated the laws of physics and sanity as humans understood them. According to the cultists' testimony, the great Old Ones had been imprisoned or had fallen into a death-like sleep when the stars changed position. They now lay dreaming in their ancient cities, waiting for the time when the stars would again be right and they could reclaim dominion over the earth. The greatest of their cities was Elie, a nightmare corpse city of non-Euclidean geometry that lay sunken beneath the waves of the Pacific Ocean. The cult's purpose was to keep alive the memory of the Old Ones and to await the day of their return. They chanted the ritual phrase, Fanglui Meglanoff Cthulhu Loye Guanogal Fatam, which one of the cultists translated as, "In his house at Relier, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming." The cult was ancient beyond measure, stretching back to the dawn of human consciousness. It had adherents in every corner of the globe, though they operated in secrecy, meeting in remote locations to perform their rites. The membership included individuals from all walks of life, though they were predominantly those at the margins of society or those with particularly sensitive or unstable minds. One elderly cultist, a half-blood named Castro, provided the most detailed account. He spoke of the dreams that came to sensitives when the great Old Ones stirred in their sleep, sending out psychic emanations that could be perceived by receptive minds. These dream messages urged the faithful to prepare for the return of their masters and to perform the rituals that would hasten that terrible day. Castro described how the great Old Ones were not composed of matter as humans understood it, but existed in dimensions and states of being incomprehensible to mortal minds. They could not be truly killed or destroyed, for they were beyond such concepts. When Lie would rise from the ocean depths and the stars aligned correctly, Cthulhu would emerge and teach man new ways to shout and kill and revel and enjoy themselves. The cultists' ravings painted a picture of an ancient conspiracy spanning millennia. A hidden current of forbidden knowledge flowing beneath the surface of human civilization. Throughout history, artists and prophets had occasionally tapped into this stream, producing works of disturbing genius or falling into madness. The cult carefully preserved these fragments of cosmic truth, passing them down through generations. Professor Angell had been deeply disturbed by Inspector Legrasse's account and the accompanying statuette. He had questioned the other scholars present at the archaeological meeting, seeking any corroboration or parallel to the Louisiana cult's mythology. Most had dismissed the entire affair as primitive superstition mixed with the ravings of degenerate minds. However, one attendee, Professor William Channing Webb of Princeton, had recognized elements of the story. He had encountered a similar cult among a degenerate tribe he had studied during an expedition to Greenland years earlier. The Eskimo cultists he had interviewed spoke of the same great old ones and used similar ritual phrases. Though the harsh Arctic environment had shaped their particular practices and beliefs, Webb's Greenland findings provided independent corroboration of a widespread, ancient cult devoted to entities called the Great Old Ones. The consistency of the mythology across such disparate cultures suggested something more than mere coincidence or cultural transmission. Professor Angell had dedicated himself to investigating this mystery, assembling a file of newspaper clippings, scholarly references, and personal correspondence related to the cult. 3. The Madness from the Sea. The final section of Professor Angell's papers revealed the most disturbing evidence of all. Among his documents, Thurston discovered a recent newspaper clipping from the Sydney Bulletin, dated April 18, 1925. The article described the strange experiences of the survivors of a maritime incident in the South Pacific. The account centered on Gustav Johansen, second mate of the schooner Emma out of Auckland, New Zealand. Johansen and his crew had encountered a mysterious armed yacht, the Alert, in the remote waters of the Pacific, after a violent confrontation in which several men died. The surviving sailors discovered that the Alert's crew had been engaged in its sinister mission. They were cultists, seeking a specific location in the ocean. Among the Alert's papers, the Emma's crew found coordinates and references to the same mythology Professor Angell had been investigating. The cultists had been searching for Lie, believing that the time of awakening was at hand. The dates corresponded precisely with the period of Henry Wilcox's dreams and the global wave of psychological disturbances. Thurston determined to seek out more information about this incident. His investigation led him to Oslo, Norway, where Johansen had retired after his ordeal. Tragically, Thurston learned that the sailor had died under mysterious circumstances before he could be interviewed. However, Johansen had left behind a detailed manuscript describing his experiences. The manuscript told a tale of cosmic horror beyond human comprehension. After the confrontation with the Alert, Johansen and his surviving crew member, William Bryden, had continued on the Alert's plotted course, driven by curiosity and the strange compulsion that seemed to emanate from that region of the sea. On April 2nd, 1925, the exact date when Wilcox's dreams had ceased, they encountered an inexplicable phenomenon. An island had risen from the depths, or perhaps had been there all along, but suddenly become accessible. This was no ordinary landmass, but a nightmare of non-Euclidean geometry and impossible angles. The very stone of which it was composed seemed wrong. The architecture and proportions violated every principle of natural physics. The structures on this risen island were of such vast and ancient construction that they dwarfed any human edifice. Cyclopean blocks larger than cathedrals had been assembled with precision into buildings that hurt the eye to observe. The angles were all wrong walls that should have been parallel met at impossible intersections, and surfaces that appeared vertical proved to be at acute angles that defied gravity and reason. Johansen described the overwhelming sense of wrongness that pervaded the place. The very air seemed thick with malevolence, and the stone appeared to be of some unfamiliar mineral that seemed both ancient beyond measure and strangely vital. Hieroglyphics covered the surfaces, speaking in a language no human tongue had ever spoken. At the center of this nightmare city stood a massive door or portal, sealed with some ancient mechanism. Johansen and Bryden, driven by a mixture of curiosity and the psychic compulsion emanating from the place, managed to open this entrance. What emerged from that opening destroyed Bryden's sanity and nearly killed Johansen. Cthulhu itself had awakened and emerged from its eons-long sleep. The entity that shambled forth was beyond description, mountain of pulpy, gelatinous green immensity, vaguely in the shape depicted in the statuettes and bas-reliefs, but infinitely more terrible in its actual presence. The octopus-like head writhed with activity, and the thing moved with a horrible fluidity that suggested it was not entirely material in nature. The mere sight of Cthulhu was enough to drive a man mad. The creature's presence violated the laws of reality itself. It existed in dimensions beyond the three known to human science, and looking upon it meant perceiving geometries and angles that the human brain was never meant to process. Johansen, displaying remarkable presence of mind despite his terror, raced back to the Alert with the gibbering, insane Bryden. As Cthulhu pursued them with a horrible, shambling gait, Johansen started the yacht's engine and aimed the vessel directly at the approaching monstrosity. The yacht struck Cthulhu, and, incredibly, the impact seemed to affect the entity. Its body, though apparently composed of some gelatinous substance, was dispersed by the collision, but not destroyed. The scattered parts immediately began flowing back together, reforming with a sickening fluidity. However, the brief disruption gave Johansen time to turn the yacht and make his escape at full speed. As the Alert fled westward, Johansen looked back to see Yalai sinking once more beneath the waves. The island of nightmare geometry descended into the depths as suddenly as it had risen, taking the reforming Cthulhu back to its dreaming prison. The stars, it seemed, were not quite right yet, The great old one's awakening had been premature or incomplete. The journey back to civilization was harrowing. Bryden died raving about what he had seen, and Johansen found himself the sole survivor with knowledge of the truth. The alert was eventually spotted by another ship, and Johansen was rescued, though he told an incomplete story to his rescuers, omitting the most horrifying details. Conclusion: Francis Thurston, having assembled all these pieces of evidence, the cultists' accounts, the global outbreak of strange dreams, and Johansen's first-hand encounter with risen Eleander, stood the terrible truth his granduncle had discovered. The ancient mythology was not merely superstition, but a fragmentary memory of actual entities that had existed on Earth before human civilization. Cthulhu and the Great Old Ones were real, though their nature transcended human understanding. They existed in states of being beyond normal matter and consciousness, dreaming in their ancient cities and occasionally sending forth psychic emanations that touched sensitive minds across the world. The cults that worshipped them were not merely deluded. They were maintaining contact with actual cosmic entities of unimaginable power and alien nature. The brief rising of Ariage in 1925 had been a near catastrophe for humanity. Had Cthulhu fully awakened and the stars been completely aligned, the entity might have broken free from its prison entirely, heralding the return of the Great Old Ones and the end of human civilization as we know it. Johansen's courageous act had brought humanity a reprieve, sending the creature back into its death-like sleep for an unknown period. But the threat remained. Lyre still existed somewhere in the Pacific depths, and Cthulhu still dreamed therein. The cults continued their activities, awaiting the day when conditions would be right for their master's return, and sensitive minds across the world remained vulnerable to the psychic emanations of the sleeping entity. Occasionally receiving fragmentary visions of the truth, Thurston understood why his granduncle had been so disturbed by his investigations, and why the knowledge had ultimately contributed to his death. Knowing the truth about humanity's place in the cosmos, knowing that we are insignificant specks in a universe populated by ancient, powerful, and fundamentally alien entities, was a burden few minds could bear. The most terrifying aspect was not the existence of Cthulhu itself, but what it represented. The Great Old Ones were merely one group of entities among many that existed in the vast cosmos. If they could be imprisoned by something, by the stars moving out of alignment, or by forces unknown, then there were powers beyond even them. The universe was filled with incomprehensible beings and forces, and humanity's cozy worldview of a rational, knowable reality was merely a comforting delusion. Thurston recognized that he now possessed the same dangerous knowledge that had haunted his granduncle. He also recognized the pattern of mysterious deaths that seemed to follow those who delved too deeply into these matters. Professor Angell Johansen and others who had come too close to the truth had met untimely ends. As he contemplated the papers before him, Thurston understood that he too might be in danger. The cults were still active, still working toward their goals of awakening the Great Old Ones. Those who threatened to expose them or who possessed too much knowledge about the true nature of reality were unlikely to be tolerated. Yet he felt compelled to document what he had learned, to leave some record for those who might come after. Perhaps the knowledge would prove useful in some future crisis, when Elie might rise again and Cthulhu stir from its eons-long slumber. Or perhaps the documentation would merely serve to drive others mad with the weight of cosmic truth. In the end, Thurston reflected on the opening truth he had written. The most merciful thing in the world is indeed the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. The isolated facts and observations of daily life protect us from the terrible vista of reality, the knowledge that we inhabit an ancient cosmos filled with entities and forces that regard humanity as less than insects, if they regard us at all. The horror of the situation lay not in any immediate threat, for Lai had sunk again and Cthulhu had returned to its dreaming. Rather, the horror was existential and eternal, the knowledge that it would rise again, that the cults would continue their work, and that some day, perhaps in the near future, perhaps in ages hence, the stars would again be right. When that day came, Cthulhu would emerge from Elie in full power, and the great old ones would reclaim the earth. Humanity's entire existence, all of our civilizations and achievements, would be swept away as inconsequential. We would be taught new ways to shout and kill and revel, becoming either the playthings or the slaves of entities whose nature and purposes we could never comprehend. This was the call of Cthulhu, not a summons to worshippers, but a psychic echo of an ancient, dreaming entity whose very existence threatened to undermine human reason and sanity. The call reached across time and space, touching sensitive minds and drawing them toward forbidden knowledge. It promised power and revelation, but delivered only madness and the bitter understanding of humanity's cosmic insignificance. Thurston concluded his investigation with a sense of profound unease. He had solved the mystery of his granduncle's disturbing research and strange death, but in doing so had inherited the same burden of terrible knowledge. Like Pandora opening her box, he had uncovered truths that perhaps should have remained hidden. The papers were complete. The evidence was assembled. But what was to be done with this knowledge? Publishing it would likely be dismissed as fantasy or madness, yet might also draw dangerous attention from the cults. Destroying it would be the safer course, but would leave humanity unprepared for future encounters with the cosmic horror that waited in the Pacific depths. As he sat contemplating these questions, Thurston heard a knock at his door, an unexpected visitor late in the evening. And in that moment, he felt a chill of premonition, wondering if the pattern would continue, if he too would become another mysterious casualty in the long history of those who had glimpsed the truth about Cthulhu and the great old ones. The universe, he now understood, was far older, vaster, and more terrible than humanity had ever imagined. We live on our placid island of ignorance, and perhaps that is exactly where we should stay. For those who voyage too far into the black seas of infinity, who correlate to many disparate pieces of knowledge, inevitably encounter vistas of reality that drive them either to madness or to an early grave. The call of Cthulhu echoes still through the depths of the Pacific, through the dreams of sensitives, through the chants of hidden cultists. It is a call that has sounded since before humanity est dawn, and will continue long after our extinction. It is patient, eternal, and ultimately irresistible, the voice of cosmic forces that dwarf human civilization in both power and timescale. And somewhere in the lightless depths, in a city of impossible geometry that defies all natural law, great Cthulhu lies, dreaming still, waiting for the stars to once again assume their proper positions in the sky. When that day comes, and it will come as surely as the tides follow the moon, the nightmare will emerge from the ocean, and humanity will finally understand its true place in the cosmos, not as masters of creation, but as fleeting mayflies dancing on the surface of unfathomable abysses.